The highest levels of the Pentagon are attending this meeting. The people who are there, they need to be there and able to do their job. So the fact that she was there meant that somebody, a policy person, a subject matter expert, somebody who could help Pete Hegseth do his job better, didn't have access to information in that meeting that they should have.
This is such a good point, and I had not thought of it until you raised it. See, this is why I have talked to you guys. I mean, these meetings, there's not that many people in them, to your point. So it could have meant the senior director for Europe or an expert on Ukraine or somebody who was there for substantive reasons didn't get a seat in the meeting because she was in the meeting, which is not how it's supposed to work. All right, Ned, you sat in probably more meetings, more of these meetings than Chris and I have, and we've both sat in a lot of them. And the thing is, which we all know, but for everybody out there, you probably know this too, but that we have a very close intelligence sharing relationship with the UK. I mean, the closest, if not one of the closest. And the Times reporting saying that they were even uncomfortable with her presence there. What does that tell you about this whole situation? What do you think about it all?
Jen, look, we spend billions upon billions of dollars each year in our intelligence gathering apparatus. But I will tell you, the most valuable component of our intelligence community is actually free, or at least close to free. And that's the information we receive from our foreign partners, from the Brits, from the Australians, from some of our other European partners, from some of our partners in the Indo-Pacific. And you know why they provide us that information, Jen? Because of one thing. That's trust. They trust us to protect their information. Trust is really the coin of the realm when it comes to these intelligence sharing relationships. It is very, very hard won, and it is very easily lost. And this is the kind of thing, especially when it's iterative, when it happens over and over again in this administration, that will quickly diminish that trust. The Brits probably walked out of that meeting scratching their heads. Our NATO counterparts walked out of their meeting that included Jennifer Hegseth, I'm certain, scratching their heads. They read the same press that we all see every single day. They see that people without security clearances are included in signal chat chains. They see that the closest personal aide to the President of the United States, the person who sees absolutely everything that crosses his desk, or at least is positioned to see that, doesn't have a security clearance. And somehow, not only does not have a security clearance, just declined to pursue one. So, Jen, that's my concern, that all of these episodes will add up to an erosion of that trust and will have real national security costs for all of us.
Let me ask you about the security clearance piece. And you're talking about Natalie Harp. We don't know what Jennifer Hegseth's security clearance situation is. We've all filled out these SF-86s. They're kind of a pain in the butt. You have to fill out any contacts you've had, any travel you've had with foreign officials. There's only a couple of categories, though, that really, I think, would concern anyone, right? Drug use, if that's something, lying about your background. What do you make of her refusing to fill this out, Natalie Harp, that is, for what seems to be almost a year?
It's very weird. When I first heard that, I assumed that nobody had asked her to go through this process or something of the like. But the fact that she's refusing to do it, that would be grounds for removal from the White House. You wouldn't be able to show up at the White House to go to work if you were refusing to answer these questions. It would certainly raise eyebrows at a bare minimum. So it's like baffling to me. I don't really understand how she got away with it for so long. And Lord only knows what we're going to find out when she actually does fill it out.
It is. I mean, I think we made you fill it out before you even started work.
Yeah.
And that, I think, I remember what the policy was that I experienced as well.
Which makes sense.
Ned, what about you? You're very familiar with what goes into a background check. What's been your reaction to her refusal to fill this out? Where does your head go on what that's all about?
Jen, my head goes where you started, and it is to remind myself and everyone I talk to that this is not normal. Let me tell you what normal looked like during the administrations in which the three of us served. Jen, you and I in the Obama and Biden administrations, and Chris and I in the Biden administration. When I first went over to the Obama White House, I came from the CIA. I was a CIA officer detailed over to the Obama White House. The Obama White House didn't just take for granted that this guy who showed up on Monday from the CIA had a security clearance. Of course I did. They knew I did. They assumed I did. But they still went through the process of checking that I had a clearance, that they had the appropriate clearance, and that it was still active. Let me put this in perspective too. In my last job in government during the Biden State Department, every single morning I would receive the president's daily brief, a version of it. And Natalie Harp, she would, without a security clearance, she had access to more compartments, that is to say, to more categories of classified information than I did as a PDB recipient in that last job in the White House. And that's because even though I had a top secret clearance, I wasn't cleared into everything that the president was cleared into. When you're sitting 12 feet away from the president, when your desk is the pass-through vehicle for every piece of paper that goes to the president's desk, whether it's from the Domestic Policy Council or the Council of Economic Advisors, or more importantly in this case, the National Security Council, whether it's from departments and agencies like the Department of Defense or the Central Intelligence Agency, you are going to be in a position to see things that I could not have seen, that the senior most officials in the U.S. government in national security positions could not have seen. And Jen, it's a huge problem when you have someone who has repeatedly opted not, for whatever reason, to pursue a security clearance, at least in a position to witness that.
I suspect there's going to be more reporting on this because there are, again, it doesn't take that long. I understand she's busy, but everybody has to do it. And to all of your points, we all had to do it even before we were really starting to work. Let me go back to Jennifer Hegseth, who we also don't know what her security clearance, if she has a security clearance, is at all. You spent a couple of years in DOD. There are not many political appointees in the Department of Defense. You were one of not many. It's a department that is full of members of the military, full of civil servants. I just wonder what you think the reaction is of the building to a former Fox News producer who it's unclear what her security clearance is pushing her way into the inner circle of the Secretary of Defense, regardless of his background.
One of my favorite parts of working at the Pentagon was working with the men and women who were serving in uniform. They were there not because Joe Biden was president, not because Donald Trump was president before him. They were there to serve their country. They swore an oath to the Constitution, right? So for them to see a political appointee come in, for them to see his wife following him around the world because he's concerned, or they're concerned, that he's going to find himself getting into trouble, which is what the reporting said, that he might start drinking too much. They're concerned that a secretary had to commit to not drinking too much as Secretary of Defense during his confirmation hearings. That shouldn't even be on the table. Nobody should have to worry about a Secretary of Defense with a drinking problem. We're talking about one of the most important positions in the world, making life and death decisions that impact thousands of people around the country every single day. And for him to have to rely on bringing his wife on trips to get the job done is just unacceptable. And it doesn't put any faith, the men and women who are serving, they just can't have faith in their leadership when that's the case.
And then you alluded to this earlier about trust and how people in foreign capitals can read our news as well. I mean, right now they're digesting the Secretary of Defense, the president, who have, I guess, versions of babysitters, as I said, people who don't seem to have security clearance, confusion over the war, an obsession with cement and flagpoles. But I just wonder on the Jennifer Hegseth piece specifically, where does this, I mean, they seem to have doubled down. The response from the Defense Department is doubling down on the role they want her to play moving forward. And I just wonder, as it relates to those relationships you alluded to and you talked about and you've experienced with, what impact does that have if 6 months from now she's in every meeting or even more than that?
Well, Jen, look, I hope, and as I understand it, at least Jennifer Hegseth's latest role is to serve as the Secretary's Special Advisor on military spouses. And I would hope in that role that maybe she could focus on the spouses of those on the USS Lincoln who have been at sea for 200 plus days without a port call and who are suffering immense stress, both physical and mental health stress. That, I think, would be a good thing. But Jen, you said it earlier, there are elements of this that are insanity, that are insane. And this insanity, I think, has layers. One of the layers goes, I think, beyond Jennifer Hegseth. When you think about some of the political appointees that Secretary Hegseth has surrounded himself with, it's his wife, it's his brother, it's his personal attorney, It's some of his former colleagues from Fox News Weekend. And this administration, just to make one quick point, has gone out of its way to blame every single calamity that has befallen it virtually on DEI. I don't even know what DEI means anymore because they blame it on everything from wildfires to falling test scores to aviation disasters. But I think if we agree that a DEI hire is a hire based on something other than merit, one might be able to call a lot of these hires DEI hires. And meanwhile, as the secretary surrounds himself with people who probably, I'm going to guess, did not go through the competitive process, compete against hundreds of millions of other Americans for these jobs, this same secretary is firing some of our most accomplished, some of our most decorated, some of our most storied general and flag officers that our nation has ever known, from a former chairman of the Chiefs of Staff to a chief of naval operations and dozens in between. Jen